back to Daf Yomi at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So we're on Daf Yud, Masechta Eruvin. Welcome back, Kenny.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah, boy, you should see the route that Kenny took on his bike. Amazing. He basically rode his bike from Los Angeles to San Francisco. Unbelievable, in 6 days. It's just amazing route that he took along Highway 1, really. Yeshar Koyach.
Thank you.
Yeah. Daf Yud, Masechta Eruvin 10. Rebbe Hida Omer Be'inan Shnei Pasim. Rebbe held that if you have we've been dealing with the opening of a mavui. We're dealing with a chotzer, a small chotzer that opens up into a larger chotzer. He said Rebbe had an opinion that in order to be able to carry in the smaller chotzer, you needed boards, 2 boards on either side. Where do you see that? The Tanya. Chotzer niteres b'pasechot. That in certain situations, if you have a chotzer that, for example, that's opened up into Rishus HaRabim. So normally a chotzer is a Rishus HaYachid that you can carry in. But if the chotzer is opened up into Rishus HaRabim, then you have to correct it you have to do it just like in a mavui. You have to use either a lechi or a korah. So a chotzer also has to have a certain correction done to it in order to carry them. So the Tanna Kama says, if you put 1 board on one side, that's enough. Rebbe Omer b'shnei pasim. So you need 2 boards. So high mind. So we've had this debate that if you put a lechi in a mavui, where it can be seen, let's say, from the people walking outside in Rishus HaRabim, looking at the mavui, can see this piece of wood sticking out. But for example, let's say it's flush to the wall of the mavui. So only the people on the outside can see it, but the people in the mavui cannot. So if you hold like that, and it's Eino Nidar Mishum Lechi, such a lechi is not a good lechi. The Rebbe Savar like Rabbi Yosi, Udrab Zeru, Udravina Lessa, and Rebbe will also hold like Rabbi Yosi, Rab Zeru, Ravina, and that's why Mishum Hachini, Tana Be'eser B'dola B'chadasri. That yesterday we learned this is an unusual case where the smaller chotzer is indenting into the larger chotzer. The opening of the smaller chotzer is 10, and the opening of the larger one was 11. So it's 1 amma larger, which gives you 3 tfachim on either side of the smaller chotzer to the wall. And you use lavud, like lavud means it goes away, and that would allow. That's what's allowing us to carry there. Rabbi Shavlik Rabbi Yosi. But if we're going to say that if a regular lechi that sticks out into the Rishus HaRabim, so the people in Rishus HaRabim can see it, but the people inside cannot see it, and we say that even though the people inside it cannot see it, it's considered a good lechi. Ud Rav Zeir, Ravina isn't therefore he holds Rav Zeir Ravina, and Rabbi Lo Shavalak Rabbi Yosi. Why did we need this specific case of Gedolah B'chadasrei Lamali? Why did it have to be that the opening of the Chatzar Ketana is 10 and the larger is 11? Either way, if you came to a permit carrying in the larger Chatzar, you wouldn't have needed a whole extra amma, 6 tvachim, 1 tefach on either side, which creates a lechi on either side, would have been enough. The ilameis or the Ketana Kasi, and if the Brisa came to prohibit carrying in the Ketana, so Lashmina and the Mipagi Tufa, then the distance couldn't just been, let's say 10 and 11, it could be 10 and 12 or 10 and 13 or 10 and 14. Ella Lashmamino, the Gemara deduces the way it just went through that Nira B'chutz for Shabbat B'fnim, if you have an example of a lechi that is sticking out from the mavui so that the people outside in Rishus HaRabim can see it, but it's flush to the wall so that people inside can't see it. Eino nidin mishum lechi. It's not treated like a good lechi shmamina. So let's just keep that in mind that at this point of the Gemara, it seems to suggest that kind of lechi doesn't work. Now, Rav Yosef, lo shmieli hayshmaitza. I didn't hear this sukkah. Amalei Abaya. What do you mean? Now, this is a famous dialogue that goes on between Abai and Rav Yosef. This is Dr. Agatstein. What was that? It's not an indent into the Mavli, because it's just an extension of the wall. So l'chora, this is an example of nirj mevachutz v'shav b'ifnim. So the din is like this: Pachas me'arba amois. If this extension is less than arba amois, then nidin mishum lechi.
Hello, Ernie.
Yes.
So this is what it looks like. Sorry.
No, the other one. Yeah, there.
Yeah.
We have an extension of the wood going into the Rosh Hashanah from the Mavli. So if those lechis are less than arba amois, nidin mishum lechi, it's a good lechi. Umishtamish chudo apnimi, you can carry in the Mavli up until the inner point of where the lechi starts. Because remember, we learned yesterday, everybody holds you can't carry between the lechis, but up until the lechi you can carry. However, if those extension boards that are sticking in to the Rosh Hashanah are arba amis or more, so now nid mishum mavli. What you've done, this is an example where you have the board sticking on both sides. Basically, you've extended the mavli, because we've learned that the minimum shear length of a mavli has to be at least daled amis. So now by extending these two lechis from either side of the mavli by daled amis, it's a new mavli, and therefore also l'tashmish bekulo. You cannot, unless you put another lechi on one of those boards, there's no lechi in the mavli anymore. You can't treat them as a lechi, so therefore you wouldn't be able to carry anywhere. And the at amritlon Allah. And after you taught us this sugya, you told us shmami not plus. You said we could deduce three halachas from here. That number one, shmami not ben l'chayin osir. That when we've been dealing with the question, are you allowed to carry under the koira? Are you allowed to carry ben l'chayin? So we see from this story that clearly you cannot carry in the area between the lechis. That's number one. Ushmamina meshech mavui ba'arba. It's clear that to define a mavui, it has to be at least a minimum of arba amos long. Ushmamina nira mibachutz v'sham b'fnei nid mishum lechi. Right, the initial psak where we said pachas me'arba amos nid mishum lechi. Right, even though this is a lechi that cannot be seen by the people on the inside. So, Freit the Gemara. And the Gemara, and it seems like one of the things that Rabbi Yosef taught was that that's the halacha. Freit the Gemara, tiyufta v'hilchasa. You just finished the previous Gemara. That's why I said let's remember. We just finished the previous sugya saying nirim machos v'shavim eno nid mishum lechi. We said you don't call it like that. Then all of a sudden you give me the halacha is like that it is a good lechi. What's going on here? The Gemara says in the halacha is that it is a good lechi. Mishum. The Tani Rav Chia Kavose, because there's another baraisa that we quoted in the name of Rav Chia that said that if you have a lechi that cannot be seen by the inside, but as long as it can be seen by the outside people, it's still a good lechi. Okay. Then we talked about if the opening of the mavli was greater than 10 amos, so you have to reduce the size of the opening. Amar Abaye, Tana. V'harachov me'aser yemai. The Tana Kama says, if the opening to get into the mavli is larger, is wider than 10 amos, you've got to reduce it. Rav Yehuda says no, it could be even bigger than 10 amos. Freit the Gemara ad kama. According to Rav Yehuda, how open can it be? Sava Rav Achai kamed Rav Yosef lemeimar ad 13 ama ushlish. He allows up to 13 and a third. Where did he pull that number out of a hat? No. Kal v'chomer mi pasei biros. The famous case of pasei biros. What is this? So, if you have a well, and the well is, let's say, daled by daled and 10 tfachim deep. So we know by all the laws we've learned so far that establishes a Rishus HaYachid. Now, if this well is in the Rishus HaRabbi, and you're standing in the Rishus HaRabbi, if you take your cup and dip it in the well, you've transferred from Rosh Hashanah Yachid to Rosh Hashanah. You wouldn't be able to use the well. So Chachamim made a kula that you could build sort of right angle pieces of wood, 4 of them. So they create an enclosure, but there was 13 1/3 ames opening. Now, why did they need it to be so big? Because this was done in the roads between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael, so that the Ole Regel, who would come with their camels and their cows and all of their wagons from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael for Aliyas HaRegel. So they could bring their animals and all their possessions.
Ernie, can you see it?
Yes. So that's the well on the inside, and then you have boards.
Harold, take a look, Harold.
Large openings between the boards. So, and that creates a Reshus HaYachid. So now the well and is inside this sort of artificial created Reshus HaYachid. So now you can draw from the well and drink there. That's the kula of the Pasei Biros. Even though normally, by a normal chutzner, we say that if the opening is greater, if there's more than 51% of the walls have been broken, so they're open, and only 49% of a chutzner's walls are intact, we say that the place loses its status as a Rosh Hashanah. However, here, it's a special kula by the Pasei Biros that even though there's more open space than closed space, it was treated as a Rosh Hashanah. So, the Gemara is saying, Rabbi Yehuda learned that the opening of a mavu can be more than 13 1/3 because of Kavachomer from the case of Pasei Biros. Uma Pasei Biros, she tarta ben parts merubal oimei. The Chachamim permitted, even though there's more than 50% opening as opposed to closed. But lo hi tarta ben yoiser mishlosh esrei shlish, there was still a limit. The opening could not be more than 13 1/3 amma. Mavui, shaloi tarta bo parts merubal oimei. If in a mavui's walls there's more opening than closed, you wouldn't be able to carry the mavui. So eino din shlotate bo yoiser mishlosh esrei shlish. So certainly the opening to the mavui could also not be greater than 13 1/3. However, the Gemara says no. He hanoisenes, that same Kalvachomer you attempted to learn could be just the opposite. Pasei biroi shitarte ben parts merube. The case of these wells, that you were permitted to have more opening than closure. Lo tate ben yosef mishosh shlish, yet it did not permit more opening than 13 1/3. Mavui shaloi tate bo parts merube lo oimit. A mavui that did not give you the kula of parts merube lo oimit. Maybe you could have a wider opening. Or inami lidich kisa. Or if you want, you could learn like this. Pasei biros that killed to chad kula. Pasei biros, there's one kula, which we explained. So akebu kula achrina. So we give this other kula that maybe you could have besides having the concept of paritz merubal oimed, you could have a wider opening than 10 ams. But mavui kla lo. But there's no kula about mavui. So maybe you can't give any kula. So the halacha of a Shulchan Aruch is you can, if it's greater than 10 amas, we don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. We paskin like Tanakama, and you got to reduce the opening of the mavui to less than 10 amas. And of course, you need a lech and a koira. Tony Levi, mavui shirach v'esri mama, a mavui that was 20 amas wide. So you're 10 amas more than it should be. So there's a correction. No eitz kana be'emtziasu. You take a pole and you plant it right between, you subdivide it in half. So now there'll be 10 amas on this one side of the pole and the opening, and 10 amas on the other side. So basically you've created 2 10 amas openings. Vidayo, and that would allow you to carry in the mavui. As long as, again, you use a lechi and a koira. Ikedi Amri Amar Shmuel Mishmei Levi. Ein halacha ka'osa Mishnah. Halacha is not like that Mishnah regarding the one pole. So elahechi of it. So how should we correct the problem? Amar Shmuel Mishmei Levi. Ose pas kavoa asara b'meshach arba amas. The solution is, yes, you have to divide it, but you divide it not with a pole. You have to take a board that's 10 tfachim high and 4 amas length. So you created like a new mavui on either side. Because remember, a mavui's length is, as long as it's arba amos, it's like a new mavui. Umamida lo orko shel mavui, right? You plant the arba amos part on the lengthwise of the mavui. It's got to be at least 10 tfachim tall. Or inami can Rav Yehuda. Maybe the correction could be like Rav Yehuda. Don't Rav Yehuda. Mavui shri racham 15 amma. If you have a mavi that's 15 amos wide, so marchik shtei amos, you walk off 2 amos from the wall. The oseh pas sholish amos, and you put a board that's 3 amos wide. So that will correct it. Rashi says, "Marchik shtei amos min hakoisel, umatchil asut sham pas the same sholish amos listoma pesach." So now you've closed up the.
And here you go, the top drawer. And you see?
Yeah. Or here he gives another picture here.
This picture in color is better.
See, there is the 5 amas. There's the 2 amas. Yeah, here's the 10, and this is 5, made up by 3 of the board and 2 of the space. And then you have a koira on top. Why not make stay 2 amas away from the wall? Make a board that's an am and a half. Oh no! First you put the 1.5 board next to the wall. We're talking about at the opening, and then have a 2 amas space. And then have the another 1.5. So it's just another way of filling in the 5 amas. Here we don't accept doing it that way, because having to use this kula on 2 sides of empty space, we don't treat it as if it's an oime. Someone says, no, that's not correct. Even when you try to use this kula on both sides, it's okay. The only reason here we don't allow it, the 10 amas that are next to the 1.5 is mavatal, like nullifies it. So it goes away. Why not make a board that's 1 amma wide, the yarchik amma, and then have a space of an amma, the yasip pas amma, and put a second board of an amma, the yarchik amma, the yasip pas amma. So you have 3 boards with a 1 amma space between them to close off the 5. And then shmami no oimei kaporitz us. And if it's exactly 50-50 between boards and space, it's not good. Whereas there's no right from there either. This would work. Shani hach over there doesn't work. The same thing. Because you have a 10 amma space next to one of the boards, it's mavatal that whole board. Let be 1 amma away from the wall. And then Yasip Hasama, they make 1 amma board, 1.5. The Yarchik amma, then have a distance of an amma. The Yasip Hasama Mechza. So 1.5 board, 1.5 board, and that's equals 3, and then 2 spaces of an amma. Well, it says that works in a chanabi. However, kul haylo atrachin rabbanan, to require you to put that kind of multiple boards up, that would work. There's no nullification. But the Chacham didn't require you to be matriach so much. Freit the Gemara, if you would have allowed this last version, why aren't we lechish dil mashovik pischa rabba v'ayal pischa zuta? That the public that is using this mavui, rather than use the 10 amma space, will use the smaller openings. Amar Avada Bar Masna. It's an important rule here. Chazaka ein adam eniach pesach kadol v'nichtas bepesach kadol. The public does not leave a big opening to go through a small opening. Freit the Gemara Maishtam Rabami Rabasi. We had a previous case on Eruvin Daf Hey, where you had you had the mavli that was cracked open on the side, and there we were worried that they might go through. But the difference there, that was right at the opening of the mavli, right by the wall. And that's what Hasam Kamamat Bilucha. By us, by going, in our case, by going through the smaller opening, it's going to reduce the traffic that the public wants. Or Hasam Kamamat Bilucha, that's why we didn't want it. Hachala Kamamat Bilucha, by going through the larger space. It's not awesome. Or ha'asla. This is like, I think it's it was like a toilet seat made out of leather, and you had straps going down. So we're going to see that this cover, the chalal shalo, and the space mitztarfin b'tefach, in order to create an OL, like a tent, over a mace, in order to fill a room with tumma, that everything underneath it should be tameh. The leather with the space can serve as the tefach. Rav Chanan, my or ha'asla. So what is this or ha'asla? Rav Chanan, or kisa shel beis hakisei. People used to sit down on the toilet on this leather thing. The kama. So what is the dimension of the space that will be considered as if it's closed? So on Rav Dimi, it's boy mikan, that's boy, 2 fingers on one side, 2 fingers on the other side, it's boy and revach bensla, and 2 fingers in the middle. So I guess they had 3 straps, and so there was 3 spaces. Couldn't be larger than 2 finger breadths. It would be considered closed, and if there was a kazayas of a mace underneath it, it would convey all atuma to everything there. Yasser Ravin Omar, he disagrees. He says, Etzbo Metzamikan, the Etzbo Metzamikan, Etzbo Revach Bemsa. He said the space was only 1.5 fingers. Armli Abai Rav Dimi, Mi Pligusai. I mean, are you having a machlokas? Armli Lo, not really. Ha B'Ravrisa, Ha B'Zutrisa. One, because the one who says 1.5, he's talking about big fingers. And the one who says the 2 fingers means small fingers. So really, the shear is the same. Omer lay lie, please. No, you're not correct. You do argue. And you're arguing in a fundamental principle. This concept of whether you say that which is standing is greater than 51% than the empty space, do you use that even when you're going on both sides? You hold that oimid meruv al aparetz applies even if it's going in both directions. Only one direction do we say that it's considered as if it's closed. But it would not be closed, and it would not be a covering of the oil mace, and therefore the tumah would go out. And the Isal Gedaita, because if you're going to tell me lo pligisu, that you two are not arguing, l'ravin hachi bar l'meimar, l'ravin, why etzba ushlish mikan, the etzba ushlish mikan, the etzba ushlish revach bem. So why didn't he say 1 1/3? What's this 1.5 business? So it must be that he's arguing with Rav Dimi in something fundamental. Elamai pligina, you're arguing. And l'didi hachi bar l'meimar. you really should have said Etzbo Shnei Shlishimikan, a finger and 2/3, and a finger and 2/3, a finger and 2/3, rather as opposed to a finger and a third. You are arguing this concept. If you have too much opening, more than 51% over that which is standing, you argue in that. You hold that it's not considered that it's closed, and therefore the tumah will go away. And he holds it is considered closed, and therefore the tumah will not go away. This is a Yeshua Tzursa Pesach. If the opening of a mavi was greater than 10 amis, if there's a door frame type of correction, the opening, then you don't have to reduce the width less than 10 amis. It could be even bigger than 10 amis. Morris says, Ashkechem Tzursa Pesach, Dimahani Barachvo. There is a kind of Tzursa Pesach that helps regarding width of the mavui. The Amaltera Dimahani Begofo. And we have, the Amaltera is like a fancy column, which we had pictures before. And we see that that has been served as a correction above a mavui. And the Gemara will go into this in more detail tomorrow. Okay.